Okay, we're here with Innovational Musings at the Northwest Transportation Conference. We've just wrapped up the last session, and we're going to have a conversation with John Charles, President and CEO of the Cascade Policy Institute, and he's going to tell us a little bit about that. And Mr. Charles just gave a presentation and discussion on transit-oriented development, and we'll discuss a little bit about that. John, thank you for taking a few moments to have a conversation.
Thank you.
So the first one is, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this into Cascade and what your interests are.
Well, my gravitation to Cascade was completely accidental. I headed up the Oregon Environmental Council from 1980 to 1996. So I'm one of the least likely people who would ever work at a free market think tank. But in the last 5 years at Cascade, or at OEC, I began to see that the environmental movement had become essentially a big power trip. It wasn't about the environment anymore. So I got disillusioned with that. In fact, specifically over land use and transportation and transit matters, I got disillusioned. So I left. I had no plan in mind, but I had met some people at Cascade, and soon thereafter they offered me a job as environmental policy director at Cascade, and I did that.
Now, when you say a power trip, that was power not related to power energy. It was a political power or ego
yes,
power?
The environmental movement primarily now is about running other people's lives just for the sake of doing it, not because it accomplishes any environmental objective. Most environmental goals from the 60s when I got involved have already been accomplished. So it'd be great if a lot of environmental groups would just declare victory, disincorporate, donate their office furniture to somebody and move on. But they all have institutional reasons why they need to keep growing, and they need to create problems even when there aren't problems, and that's primarily what they do anymore. So I've been at Cascade since 1997, first as an environmental analyst and the last 5 years as CEO. And I've conducted a lot of research out in the field on transit-oriented development projects in Portland, always asking the question, well, here's what they envisioned 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's now built out. Is it working the way they envisioned it? And I'm not interested in surveys of people. I don't care what they think. I'm only interested in how they actually behave and whether they take as much transit as planners predicted at the beginning of the project. Typically, they don't.
And the results that you showed in your presentation, which we will link to, you have a paper, and also your PowerPoint will be available. We'll link to that.
Yes.
Yeah, so the studies you've looked at, the transit-oriented development, showed that the max never even hit above 10% ridership. And typically what was the promise during peak time even?
Back in the early 1990s, when various anti-highway groups led by 1,000 Friends of Oregon persuaded the state to cancel highway expansion on the west side and replace it with transit-oriented development sort of on steroids. The promise was that if we did all this, we would see 28% of morning commuters taking the train. And I can tell you, having monitored all of those west side sites, there is no place that gets remotely close to 8%. In some cases, it's as low as 1%.
They don't get close to 8%?
To 28%.
Oh, to 28%. So the charts
I'm not sure what I said correctly. What was predicted 15 years ago was 28% of commuters would take the train. In some cases, you can get 8, 9, 10%, but getting above that is extremely difficult. All of these places, no matter how dense they are, how many row houses, apartments you have, no matter how close the train is, if you get out there and just watch people in the morning, in the middle of the day, afternoon, Saturday, Sunday, doesn't matter, you will see between 80 and 95% of all trips taken via private automobile.
Okay, so if they predicted 28% and they don't hit 10 even during the best times, what are the reasons now that they give for not matching promises?
Well, no one ever really asks the question in Portland. It's considered rude. And if it is asked, they always have an excuse. Well, you have to give it more time. This is a 30-year vision. We need more trains. The system isn't built out yet. We don't have enough connectivity between the trains.
In the meantime, those dollars, there's a finite amount of dollars that can go into transportation. They've taken it away from highways and actually giving people who pay taxes, buy gasoline, and spend the money. The solutions aren't going to things that benefit the taxpayer and the daily driver.
Well, yes, that's true. But TriMet is a monopoly, Metro is a monopoly, the agencies that do this are all monopolies. There is no market discipline for what they're doing. So when I was interviewing someone from Portland Development Commission, a project manager about a transit-oriented development project she had honchoed on the east side, which I didn't talk about today, I asked her back in 2001, so well, the project opened a couple of years ago. Do you consider it a success? Her answer, yes. What's your criteria? Her response, the day it opened, it became a success.
What role do you think is appropriate as a free market think tank for government in stimulating and incenting innovation?
Well, the best thing the government can do is keep tax rates really low, keep regulation of entrepreneurs really low, and simply allow them to innovate and to have a strong system of property rights so that someone who does create something wonderful has a way to get a profit from their investment. So that's really the central role of government anywhere in any capacity. Just keep it simple, low tax rates, the regulations should be only those necessary to prevent harm to other people, and then step back and don't pick winners and losers. Don't fund different technologies. Don't decide, as we do in Oregon, that, well, in the case of energy, nuclear is essentially illegal. And now the House of Representatives wants to continue a ban on offshore oil drilling. And they want to shut down coal-based electrical generation. And they want to rip out hydro dams. They're saying no to everything. Well, when government starts picking winners and losers, it's all politicized. And the government needs to get out of the way. None of us knows what the next new technology should be in any field. That's where you want to encourage millions of smart people to put it on the line, to try hard, to raise capital. And out of all that chaos comes the next new thing in transportation, in consumer products, in shampoo, in furniture, in anything. We have to allow that iterative, dynamic, market-based process to work.
In fact, when President Obama just recently funded $8 billion for, I guess, 8 high-speed rail corridors to invest in that, he said America should not be falling behind Europe and Asia in the deployment of high-speed trains. If they can do it, we ought to be able to do it and take that kind of leadership.
High-speed rail is a huge waste of money. There is no role for it in this country. It will never be remotely profitable. It's the classic case of a politician treating the world as a big monopoly board where he just gets to plunk down hotels and houses and buy utilities. And if we're going to take all that money, I'd rather just put the dollar bills out there and have a bonfire with it. We can at least roast some hot dogs.